in fashion in the very literal sense of it being on shirts and tattoos and wristbands and bumper stickers everywhere. WWJD, what would Jesus do? And it's a fine question to ask ourselves in terms of our navigating ethical circumstances. It's helpful in the sense that it at least presents the opportunity to consider that our will and desire may not be in sync with that of Jesus. So, WWJD in a particular scenario, and in contrast to that, what would you do? What do you think you would do in a particular situation if you were Jesus? Or more bluntly, what would you do if you were invested with all the power of Jesus Christ, King of everything, God Almighty? What would you do? Just imagine all that sweet, delectable, intoxicating power. The power to make instantaneously actual whatever you desire. The power to mould time and space and matter however you wish. Just imagine. Now, back in 2003, the movie Bruce Almighty, starring Jim Carrey, explored just that. Remember that movie? Obviously this guy does. Anyone else? Yeah.
Very fun.
So God granted Bruce God's power when Bruce thought he would do a better job than God. So you get human wisdom mixed with God's powers. And of course, it didn't go so well. One scene that demonstrated to me particularly the tragedy of such a mix was when Bruce goes and gets in his beaten up old Nissan 280Z and turns it instantly into a Celine S7. Now this was set in 2003, so he could have turned it into a Lamborghini Gallardo, a Pagani Zonda, an Aston Martin Vanquish. But he turned it into a Celine S7. That is the folly of human wisdom, right there. That is the folly of human wisdom. We can have many fantasies about what God's almightiness might be like. And I think that the prophet Daniel's vision touched on this sort of exaggerated, grandiose idea about God's power. So this vision, it starts with a man, and of course it had to be a man, so old as to properly be called ancient, pure and dazzling without a trace of male pattern baldness. He's got a flame-throwing throne with wheels of fire and great masses of servants to attend him. Now that is an appropriately impressive, kingly sort of God. But look at what happens next. Look at what happens next. One like a human being comes riding the clouds and goes before the Ancient One. And to that one, like a human being, noticeably lacking in the flashy accoutrements of godhood, is given dominion and the kingdom and all the rest. That is the difference between us and God. Thank God for that. We can project whatever fantasies of power we like onto God, onto Christ the King, but the way in which the Lord actually exercises power is to empty God's self of that, to give it away in a sense, to restrain from the use of overwhelming power, to bear with quite a rebellious mass of people, and be faithful and oriented towards love and redemption above all else, to change a person's heart from within, slowly rather than imposing an unstoppable will. So today we reflect on Christ the King as the crown, as it were, of the cycle of the Christian year. And everything about the kingship of Christ, the almightiness of God, is comprehensively different to how kingship and almightiness and power are exercised by people. Comprehensively different. We are rightly wary of when too much power is invested in too few people, or total power invested in just the one. There were tens of thousands of people around our country and our city just yesterday who were motivated to protest in response partly to concerns about the exercise of power and perceived dangers of overreaching powers by some in authority. And I think what you like about that, the point is, power and people is problematic. People wanting to be like God is a constant temptation. Indeed, it's arguably the first temptation we experience, the desire to impose our will over and against others for various reasons, whether it's pride or pleasure or because we think we know best. It reminds me of the story of the serpent tempting Adam and Eve in Genesis. For God knows that when you eat of the fruit, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. You will be like God. It's primal. It's that desire to be like God. It is primal. So again, we come back to what we think God's power is like, what we think God's almightiness and Christ's kingship is like. And the kingdom of Christ is different. It is different. So what is it like? To get a sense of what the kingdom is like, I think the best summary you can find really is the 5th chapter of Matthew's Gospel. It's the Sermon on the Mount. It's extraordinary and it outlines the qualities of the kingdom. Blessed are the meek, the peacemakers, the pure in heart and all the rest. That is a kingdom manifesto right there. And that is the kind of kingdom that I would want for my kids to live in, actually. And I guess it's the kind of kingdom that Alex and Ria want Leon to be associated with. And if it sounds utopian, what's wrong with that? We should have a vision for something more and something better. The trickiest part is living lives now that reflect the kingdom and offers a foretaste of it. And again, that is what we point to in baptism. It's the start of a journey in life of living under the kingship of Christ in anticipation of being in the fullness of that kingdom and being an agent of that kingdom for the glory of the King. So my hope and prayer for Leon is that he will come to live life to the fullest as a child of the kingdom, and that it will be not only intellectually satisfying and interesting and spiritually nourishing, but also shape and direct his actions for the good of others and for the love of God. And actually that's my hope and prayer for all of us. That is my hope and prayer for all of us. And I hope he never chooses a Selene S7. Anyway. But with that, we're going to move towards welcoming a new Christian into our midst. The Lord be with you.